Hello all and welcome to Stingray Tom's Florida and another Take 5 for Florida History. Today is part 5 in my series on the official state symbols of Florida. So far I've done an introduction video as well as ones on the mockingbird, bottlenose dolphin, and horse conch, so I thought I'd cover one of the inorganic symbols this time. Chosen by the state legislature as are all state symbols, Florida's official gemstone is the Moonstone. For some people, the reason that the Moonstone was chosen is fairly obvious. For others, not so much. It's certainly a unique reason, however. See, most states, including Florida, choose state symbols based starting with one primary criteria, that the animal or item must be found in the state. This isn't the case with Moonstone in Florida, however. In fact, Florida doesn't produce gems of any sort. We're a state of limestone, fossilized coral, phosphate, and sand. Why the state gem is the Moonstone should become clear from the date it was chosen, 1970, and three key words, Kennedy Space Center. The previous year saw the first humans land on the moon and return safely. They, and all subsequent astronauts who went to the moon, were launched from the nation's largest space launch complex, Kennedy Space Center. KSC, as it's commonly called, has been the location for American astronaut launches since Alan Shepard launched into space on a suborbital flight on May 5, 1961, but its history and Florida's history with rockets and space exploration goes back even further. Florida's first step into space happened in 1949, 20 years before Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin first stepped on the moon. Initially known as the Joint Long-Range Proving Ground, the new military facility created by President Henry S. Truman was located at Cape Canaveral on land that jutted out into the Atlantic Ocean. The land was previously known since 1938 as Naval Air Station Banana River, but was transferred to the newly formed U.S. Air Force a decade later. Initially called the Joint Long-Range Proving Ground, a year later it became part of Patrick Air Force Base, which is currently designated Patrick Space Force Base. The rocket launch facility became Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, though it was part of Patrick Air Force Base. When NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, was created in 1958, it began operations at Canaveral, but it soon became obvious that the civilian agency needed to find more room to process and launch the much larger and more complex rockets needed to get people into space. The U.S. government secured further land around Cape Canaveral, including on Merritt Island. This facility would be called the NASA Launch Operations Center, though it would later be named in honor of the assassinated President John F. Kennedy. Kennedy had proposed the idea of sending a man to the moon, and the Kennedy Space Center was dedicated to that project. In 1969, the goal was achieved, and in only 3 years, what was known as Project Apollo came to an end with a total of 12 Americans walking on the moon. So obviously the moon was and is important in Florida history, even more so in tourism history. From near the beginning, even military launches were popular with locals and snowbirds, people from northern states who would spend their winters in the Sunshine State. When NASA began sending astronauts into space, the launches were headline news, and were being broadcast live around the country and the world. These launches quickly drew thousands of visitors, and space tourism was born. It's estimated that at least 1 million people were on hand to watch the Apollo 11 launch, and that's not counting the hundreds of thousands of Floridians who stepped out of their homes and businesses up to 50 or more miles away to see the massive Saturn V rocket fly through and leave the atmosphere. It's not surprising that only a year later the Florida legislature would choose the Moonstone as the state gem. By the way, the moon doesn't have any moonstone either, not that we know of at least, though it is entirely made up of moon rock. Some 8.09 times 10 to the 19 U.S. tons of moon rock, if it was able to rest on a scale on the surface of the Earth. Moonstone is an interesting gemstone. It's a type of feldspar which initially crystallizes from cooling magma and lava. The particular type of feldspar that can be moonstone is made up of sodium, potassium, aluminum, silicon, and oxygen. For feldspar to be called moonstone, it needs to display a pearly or opalescent luster, especially when cut and polished. By the way, feldspar makes up about 41% of the Earth's crust by weight, though relatively little of it can be called moonstone. One of the most groundbreaking scientific theories that partly stemmed from the Apollo missions was the realization that the Earth-Moon system formed after a giant impact of a Mars-sized planet with the proto-Earth. The impact blasted material into Earth's orbit. That material accreted and formed the Moon. This occurred over 4.5 billion years ago. A significant part of the evidence for this Earth-Moon formation theory is that the rock composition of the Moon is quite similar to that of the Earth. So just like on Earth, feldspar is common on the Moon and is mostly found in the lunar crust, on and near the surface. Since rock-bearing feldspar is generally lighter in weight than other rocks, such as those containing iron and magnesium, once it cools and crystallizes, it tends to float on magma. Over time, it created a crust of about 30 miles or 50 kilometers thick on the lunar surface. The Moon's feldspar is primarily found in anorthosite, an igneous rock that contains nearly 100% feldspar. Anorthosite is to be found among the samples of moon rocks brought back from the Apollo missions and makes up the light-colored areas of the Moon that can be seen from Earth. It's also common on Earth. Interestingly, anorthosite is not the type of feldspar that develops into moonstone, so there is likely very little, if any, moonstone on the Moon. Moonstone has been a popular ornamental stone for thousands of years and has been connected with the Moon since ancient times. It was particularly popular in ancient Greek and Roman times, and it appears to have been associated with the gods and goddesses that represent the Moon itself. Moonstone is typically found in deposits in Armenia, Australia, Austria, India, Madagascar, Mexico, Myanmar, Norway, Poland, Sri Lanka, and the United States. While it's opalescent, it can be colored as well as colorless, showing itself with generally pastel shades of blue, brown, green, gray, peach, and pink. Moonstone is primarily used in jewelry, in rings, bracelets, pendants, and the like. Most moonstone is fairly small and is often measured in carat weight. It's not rare, and so it doesn't command high prices. Kennedy Space Center continues to be one of the most popular attractions in the state, both because of the history of the place, including the trips to the Moon and the 3 decades of space shuttle missions, and its current resurgence as a launch site for commercial contractors Boeing and SpaceX. Attending launches is still a highly popular activity, with many Sunshine State visitors planning their trips to coincide with one or more. Including launch viewings, KSC probably runs third behind the Walt Disney World Resort and Universal Resorts in attendance. KSC reports about 1.5 million people visit the attraction in a normal year. Add to that several 100,000 people who line the roads on the mainland to view each launch, even for the rockets that are unable to launch due to engine issues or adverse weather conditions. And we're talking numbers that are, well, astronomical. Since this is a channel that's dedicated to Florida tourism history, I've been covering both why the symbols are important in connection with tourism and also where the people can find them in the state. Obviously, the Moonstone's connection with KSC fulfills the first goal, but what about the second? Well, a recent search on eBay turned up over 130,000 results for Moonstone jewelry. Obviously, it can't be found in nature anywhere in the state, though there are several significant geological collections in Florida. Most notably, the Gillespie Museum on the campus of Stetson University in DeLand, an Earth Science Museum that was founded in 1958 and has a 15,000 specimen collection. Like the rest of its official symbols, the state hasn't really promoted the Moonstone much. Of course, the question might be, why should Florida promote the Moonstone? It's not mined in Florida, and it doesn't have any commercial value. It's mostly just an odd trivia fact. Maybe, with the possibility of a new project of humans traveling to the moon, there will be a resurgence. Maybe not, however, as the next big step in human space exploration is probably Mars. Maybe it'll be the carnelian or garnet that will become popular instead. Thank you for watching this video from Stingray Tom's Florida. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified each time there's a new video. Stingray Tom's Florida, traveling through time around the Sunshine State.